Well, welcome to our live interview, and I'm so excited to get to meet you because I've seen your chapter, and you're in the book "The Imaginist: Fairies, Fables, and Folklore" by Sharon G. Jordan, and she has collected a group of authors that has just been intriguing as I put this book together. So the name of your chapter is Enchantments. Can you tell us a little bit about you and what's been your inspiration? Because it seems like you've written a few books.
Yeah.
You really love the fairy tale aspect of it. So let's have that conversation about where this all began.
Well, I am also a poet, and I started writing many, many years ago. Um, but this book was different from anything else I've ever written. Um, I actually started this book around 1993, and I didn't finish it until about 12 years later. So it started with the poem "The Unicorn," and the unicorn tells a story. All of these poems are story poems. And when I wrote "The Unicorn," I felt as though it was almost trying to write itself,
Mhm.
which didn't mean that it was easy.
It never
But
is.
it was like it wanted to be written. I didn't have the idea. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to write this story and I'm going to make it a poem, a structured verse poem. Um, it just wanted to come forward this way. And it was almost as if um, I was just sort of following a compelling feeling. And that's how the whole poem got written. And I shared it with a writer friend who's a children's writer, and she said, "Oh, you need to keep going with this. You need to keep that. I feel so strongly like there's more to this than just this one poem." So she kind of planted that seed, and then I started writing the elves. And again, it was like I was just sort of, I don't want to sound too ethereal here, but I felt like I was being kind of guided. Um, and so after I finished the story of the elves, I would started getting excited about, wow, I wonder what's happening. This is very different than anything I'd ever written
Right.
before, either in prose or poetry. And then I wrote another chapter verse called The Dragon, and another chapter verse called The Fairies. And all of a sudden, I started to see that this underlying story was coming together through these separate individual stories. And and then I wrote a story that hinted of the King Arthur legend weaving into all of this. And I've always been a lover of the King Arthur legend. I'm a lover of myths, and Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces and The Hero's Journey. That whole thing has been fascinating to me because I think that cultures throughout history have been sharing their spiritual beliefs through these myths and legends, and they're all symbolic of deeper meanings. So anyway, Enchantments kind of just wanted to write itself in this form of these structured verse chapters that each individually tell their story, and each character in the book is a symbol of our humanity, a different aspect of our humanity. So the elves are a higher consciousness, and human beings are struggling to kind of reach
Yeah.
this higher consciousness. There's the wizard, who is a guide and a protector. There's the unicorn, who's a Christ symbol and very mysterious, mystical symbol. Um, and there's the dragon, who is sort of the egoic aspect.
That's
And
awesome.
the king, who's the King Arthur, the righteous king, who comes to be king because not of power mongering, but through his dedication and commitment, his imperative is to always be truthful, to have integrity, to be just, to be merciful. And these qualities are what make him into a king. So anyway, it is many stories, little stories within a grander story told by a young woman who is half elf and half human.
Mhm.
And so the story unfolds because she wants to understand her own being
Trying to
better.
have that balance. Yeah.
That balance, exactly, between human and elf. She wants to understand her heritage more deeply. So she seeks out the wizard's wisdom, and one thing leads to another. And so she goes on her journey, and through her journey, she learns about the king, who at that point when she begins, it's still in the future, but she learns how human beings and elves will have a chance to come together and live in harmony.
That's beautiful. So, you know, we grow up with those things are just make believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
what's refreshing is to think that it's not really make believe. You know, there's worlds within worlds, and there's just so much that is interwoven. And do we suspend that disbelief that it's just a fairy tale? It's not something that is real, but is it really and truly what our world is?
Mhm.
And that's fascinating to hear you share this.
And that is one of the themes within the chapter poem, The Elves, because it's about Claire, who is the protagonist in the story is Eliana, the half elf, half human. Her mother is Claire, she's human. And she believes that these fairy tales are not just childish stories, that they actually are rooted in truth. So it's because of her belief in this and her determination to not accept what everyone's telling her. You have to leave that behind now. You're growing up. You're a woman.
You don't need to
let go of all these childish ideas. And she doesn't. And that's what leads her into actually having these mystical experiences with the unicorn and the elves and so forth.
So what do you hope when somebody picks up this book, The Imaginist, and they read your chapter, what do you hope that they walk away with?
Well, of course, I hope that they're inspired, and I can't wait to read The Imaginist. I'm
It's
very
a
excited about reading
fascinating book.
everyone else's contributions. I'm hoping that what I feel is happening right now in the world is that there is a kind of awakening. And I tend to want to not use the word spiritual because that has a lot of baggage for some people. But it is an awakening into understanding our humanity on a deeper level. And I think that there are many people all over the world who, from every culture, every aspect, every history, who are coming into this, for lack of a better word, awakening to who and what we are and what we are here for. Why are we here? What is this whole thing we call
Crazy
life?
world, yes. Yep.
Yeah. And I think it is, and the theme throughout the book Enchantments is that by being true to what we believe and feel in our heart of hearts is true, we basically contribute to this huge tapestry that is happening. No one person can do this. It's everyone, and in every single, perhaps very small way. Some people may seem like they have more clout than others, but we all contribute.
We
And
do.
every contribution is truly equally important. Every thread in the weave of the tapestry is important. So what I'm hoping that people will get from this, the readers, is their own, it's not ego importance, but their own importance that is innate in our very being, in just being ourselves. It sounds very sort of Mr. Rogers, but actually Fred Rogers was brilliant and wonderful. So I guess it's okay to sound like him. But we do all have a contribution to this community, and I'm hoping that people will feel that.
Right, and I tend to totally believe in that. Have worked for many years with authors, and what I feel enriched by at this moment in time is I've worked with authors that are just writing children's books. They're amazing. With authors like Sharon, who has a whole different focus, a lot of nonfiction books, but I call it a tapestry of wisdom that I've gained because of the broad spectrum of different viewpoints, but it all weaves together to give you a whole different attitude, a whole different view, and feel so enriched at how we show up, because everything that we each individually do does make a difference in our world. It has a ripple effect in how we react to situations. And, our world is kind of a confusing place to be. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, and we wonder, why don't we do, look at the wars that are happening right now, and why? And the question is, why haven't we learned? This is just crazy. And yet we also need to find that balance within ourselves to stay true to ourselves and be strict and contribute, make a difference in the world. Such a beautiful piece about all of this. And I want to kind of change the conversation just a little bit. When you decide that you're going to sit down and write, how do you set the environment so that you can tap into what you mentioned, how it just kind of like wanted to take over? How do you tap into? I have a lot of authors that struggle with, and maybe they'll tell me, well, I'm ready to write my book, and 10 years later they still they don't have it done. And so how does a person get into that mode where they can really put pen to paper and put it down into the pages of a book that will be written?
I think the death knell of every writer and every artist is fear, and fear cloaked as judgment. I think the reason, and I have many friends, writer friends, and artists who use other mediums, whether you're a painter, dancer, whatever. But for writers, you have to just sit down and write whatever comes into your mind and heart, and trust. I think trust is a major element. There is something that I do not have a name for, a word for, a description for, but there is something within us, and it comes forward when we allow these words to just flow. And I think it's an imperative for all writers, when you are writing, just put your writer's cap on and write. And then when you feel like, okay, I'm ready to pause now, I'm ready to take a break, get up, make yourself a cup of tea or go for a walk or whatever, do the laundry. When you come back to it, you can put the editor's cap on and say, oh, I was redundant here, I don't need that. Oh, this could be said better. Oh, this paragraph could actually be said better in 2 sentences. Then you put the editor's cap on. Keep everything. Don't throw anything away. And then when you feel that inspiration coming again, take that editor's cap off and put it on the shelf where you can't reach it, and put the writer's cap on and just write and just trust. And you'll probably wind up with 3 to 10 times more than you need to tell your story. But then you put the editor's cap on and you cut and you clean it up and you work on it that way. I think that there is some kind of a myth, it could be promoted through Hollywood movies, about writers and how they write is that they just sit down and they just write. They're tapping at a computer or a typewriter or by hand. And it just comes out as this amazing finished product. Oh my God, it's genius. It's perfect. And that's not true.
That's the way they make it appear. Yeah.
Never true. Writing is rewriting. I don't remember who said that, but it was a famous writer. Writing is rewriting. And so if you have an idea and you're not writing it, it's because of fear. And oftentimes because of judgment, because you're afraid it's not going to be at this high level that you want it to be. And that comes later. That's the craft. That's not the art. That's the craft.
Right.
Where you start to sculpt and shape and remove pieces, add another piece, So.
Well, yeah. And one of the things I always tell the editor or the authors that I work with is before you decide to go off to a professional editor, read it aloud.
Perfect.
Aloud.
Yes, that's very good.
Yes. And then have somebody that you love read it to you. And I tell them, guarantee you, what you finally decide to send off to an editor is in so much better shape. It needs far less revision because when we are in the mode of writing, it's like we sometimes it feels like our fingers or our hands are transforming what's coming through to us to the page. But when we read it just off of the screen, it's like we skim read because our mind says, I wrote it, I know what it says. But when you have to really put it where you're reading it aloud, then you say, wait a minute, there should be a comma there. This is two way, like the whole paragraph's one sentence, and break it down. Then it becomes so much more alive and rich and full because we use a different part of our brain when we're doing it that way.
I think that's an excellent idea. And also, if you want to write in such a way that people won't stumble over it, it's good to read it out loud. As a matter of fact, I always thought I should have put that in my book, Enchantments. This book is meant to be read out loud, even if it's just a whisper or you're mouthing the words. The words are actually meant to be felt on the tongue. And that part of it is the poetry part. When you're reading poetry, it's very important that you read it out loud. It's meant to be felt on the tongue.
Love that.
Yeah. So, and that's a wonderful suggestion to have dear ones. I mean, my husband helped me tremendously, my son, dear friends, some professional writers and others, just good friends who are also artists in other fields. And they gave me their, because we have that kind of relationship. They understood I really want your opinion, your constructive criticism. They gave me excellent constructive criticism about, oh, this is hard for me to read, which it never occurred to me. Oh, I had the narration originally in free-form verse. It was very hard for people to read. They said it made me feel what was uncomfortable. I don't know how to read this. The structured verse was very easy for them.
Right.
So I just changed it to prose, and it still reads the same way. It just looks different on the page. Right. But when you read it out loud, you hear this rhythm and this internal rhyme that was there to begin with. That was a wonderful criticism. And then whenever anyone says, I'm confused, I don't understand, then that's a good thing. You need to look at that. Oh, well, I don't want readers to be confused.
It's interesting. I don't call it confusion. I call it refinement. All right. They're not criticizing, they're refining. They're helping you refine. And I think
exactly
that truly, if you look at it that way and you don't take it as criticism, I think some authors would quit at the criticism, but if they can look at it as refinement, it changes it.
Yes. Well, constructive criticism is always done out of love and respect.
Absolutely.
If
Right.
someone loves you and respects you as an artist, they can offer you constructive criticism. And also, not all constructive criticism is something that you will, after you think about it and you let it sit in your own heart and mind, you might decide, well, I think I am going to go ahead with this the way it is. It just offers that wonderful perspective,
Fresh perspective.
and which is just expanding your own perspective, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What a delightful interview. I think we could just go on and on and on. And thank you for for just this wonderful conversation that enhances, really, it's meant to enhance the reading for the author, because now it's more interactive. They get to hear your voice. They get to capture the essence of who you are. And thank you for this opportunity to spend this time with you.
Thank you, Becky. I really appreciate this time. And I'm so glad to meet you.
Same here. I know our Sharon just always says, "Oh, you're just gonna love Susan." She's amazing. So thank you
Yeah.
for this beautiful time, and enjoy and continue writing.
Yes, yes, I have to. It's just you have to breathe. You have to write.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.